of this regime towards we have to find a solution beyond this regime. Most importantly, because of the people calling that. Now, there has been defections already. We had a specific project as part of the entire movement to call for people who have to show and demonstrate their intentions to defect. Many have applied and many have reached. Many of them are members of the military and paramilitary forces. They are also members of the civil bureaucracy. Now, there's an extent to which they can do their part, but as long as the RGC and Khamenei are sitting up there using them as an instrument of repression, even if you have defectors, it's not enough to be a shield of protection. People were chanting anyway on the streets, and we, in fact, were successful in pushing the regime back, except for the regime acted the way it did. So what do we do now? Do we have a temporary retreat? We are, but people are continuing the struggle. They're continuing to chant slogans. You see an unprecedented solidarity of Iranians in the four corners of the world demonstrating their support for them. We've seen millions of people on the streets of Iran that are doing it. Does liberty have a price? Of course it does. Are we prepared to die for this cause? Of course we are. Our whole point is that we don't have a choice but to fight. We don't have a choice but to liberate ourselves. And the only way you can minimize the struggle in terms of time and loss of human life is not to be alone in this fight. There's too much blood between us and this regime. There's no turning back for us. So the question is the world this time going to be on the right side of history and support the Iranian people in their struggle for liberation? Or are we going to go back to business as usual and consider another movement that hasn't panned out? And I think a lot of it depends on the policy of straddling the fence and not committing to one side or the other. This is a choice to be made because the circumstances exist right now as we speak. There's an opportunity, there's a window that exists right now that could be the game changer for the whole world.
I can really hear you trying to call on something, and that something I think is intervention.
It is intervention only because the Iranian people realize that this intervention will eliminate the most important stumbling block between them and liberation, which is the regime's mechanism of repression and its killing machine. What does it mean? It means IRGC, it means any other instrument of repression, it means further economic sanctions, it means cutting economic, the regime's means to basically pay the checks of their mercenaries at the end of the day. It means putting more diplomatic pressure, expelling their diplomats, shutting down the embassy, repurposing the frozen assets that belong to the Iranian people to in fact help the Iranian people fund their campaign of labor strikes, help us with the internet and access to the world. And, you know, we had specific demands on that as to where the world can take steps that would be helpful to this campaign.
Okay, so I think it's important not to forget that 47 years ago, it was your family that was overthrown. It was your father that was overthrown. There was a reason for that. And I wonder how you sort of talk about that right now, how you think about that right now. And also, like it or not, Ayatollah Khomeini had a ground game. He had the mosques, he had people who are actually religious, and he had access to the press, as you know, in Paris, and he had a real operation, you know, cassettes smuggled in with his words into the mosques in Iran. I was there during that year of the revolution, and I remember it very well. So this is all to ask you, why do you think Pahlavi should be the leader again? And how can you do it? What kind of a plan do you have? What kind of a political ground game inside the country do you have? I mean, it's necessary, right? You've got to also be able to convince people there and to have an organization.
Well, when it comes to the name, that's the name that people chanted on the streets of Iran by the millions in 31 provinces of Iran, in the four corners of Iran. They called my name, they asked me to come to their support, and I have. And I accepted the challenge of leading the transition. As far as the plan that we have a plan before the regime's collapse and particularly for the transition after this regime, which is very well documented and presented. It's an open document. You can see it on the website of the Iran Prosperity Project. It talks about the initial 100 days. How do we manage that process? How do we avoid what happened in Iraq post-Saddam Hussein, because we don't want to have the same experience of de-Baathification. And one of the key components of this strategy is how much defection can exist, not just because we need them on the side of the people, but because, and that has been my principal position, that anyone who doesn't have their hands soiled with the blood of the Iranian people should survive regime change and have a place in the future. They can be part of the solution as opposed to remain part of the problem. That's very critical to maintain a stable transition, both on the civilian side as well as the military paramilitary side.
So I want to follow up on what you just said, whoever doesn't have blood on their hands. But as you know, a lot of your supporters, or people claiming to be your supporters, or I don't know, bots online or whatever, have zero tolerance to anybody who's in Iran right now. They call everybody a collaborator, everybody an appeaser. There is this incredible woman, Narges Mohammadi, who's a Nobel Peace Laureate. She should be a source of pride for her human rights and her sacrifice that she's made. And yet, online, it is catastrophic what people claiming to be your supporters are saying. So I don't know whether you want to say something to them, whether you reject this kind of lumping together anybody who actually lives in Iran and has to survive.
Look, I've always spoken against any kind of political violence or intimidation as a matter of principle. And I think this is an opportunity to say that one of our asks is, of course, the immediate release of all political prisoners. That includes Narges Mohammadi. And I think when we look at the future of Iran, while today we can all be allies for a common cause of liberation and a secular democracy as an alternative to this clerical dictatorship, I think we are all in the same boat. We may vote differently tomorrow, and tomorrow someone like Narges Mohammadi may choose to run as prime minister or president. That's fine. But today we need to first address the issue of liberation. And on that, I think the vast majority of Iranian secular Democrats, whether they are Republicans or monarchists or socialists or conservative or, representative of our ethnic groups or religious minorities, when you look at the diversity among us, we are quite united on these principles. And I think that is where we need to stand together in unison and do not allow those who, and I think the regime is behind a lot of these campaigns,